Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, slaves of the global plantation. The Vinny Eastwood Show is bad news. It's like the news, but worse. It's the lighter side of genocide. Just because we're being exterminated doesn't mean we can't enjoy it. Otherwise, what's the point of being killed? The Vinny Eastwood Show, where the only thing worse than living in a high-tech global police state with child trafficking Satanists is Vinny's jokes. And my very special guests today are David Icke and Mark Passio on the show together. I was just thinking it took me a very, very long time to get David Icke on the show, and I recall years ago I was talking to Mark privately, and he was saying, man, I really want to get David Icke and give an interview with him and stuff like that. And I was like, what do you do for your friends? You do for your friends what they can't do for themselves. So Mark Passio and David Icke together on the show. So just before we continue, do want to get a little bit of the housekeeping out of the way. Vinny Eastwood Show financially struggling like a mofo right now with the deplatforming and the loss of audience and that kind of thing. So please go to the VinnyEastwoodShow.com. That's Vinny with a Y, because it's the most important question. And Eastwood, go ahead, make my news, and go ahead, please make a donation or set up an automatic payment to continue the ongoing efforts of the show that have been going for about 15 years. I'd like to thank our sponsors, HoldenHealthCare.com, emphasis on the care, naturopathic oncologist, a specialist in hard-to-treat cases. If you are in New Zealand and you do want some of the best naturopathic care available for you, your family members who've been through the medical ringer, David Holden's the man. We've had him on the show as well, talking about some of the interesting things that they found in the vaccines. You can see those in the archives at the VinnyEastwoodShow.com. Additionally, our last sponsor of the night is reopen.nz. My man Henry has put this up, a database of unvaxxed-friendly, pro-choice, all-inclusive businesses in New Zealand. You can go to reopen.nz and join all these other businesses that have already decided that they want to reopen New Zealand and don't want to vaccinate their staff or require people to have vax passports and things of that nature. Disclaimer: the Vinny Eastwood Show does not encourage the breaching of COVID-19 rules. Because of my bail conditions, and I'll go to jail for up to a year and get a $2,000 fine if I do. All right. Sponsorship is all over. Let's get back to the show. So we've got Mark Passio, we've got David Icke, and in the background, what we've got happening here being the protests to end these vaccine mandates in New Zealand being broken up by police. So before we begin, David, please just tell for those who are unaware, blissfully unaware, who you are and what it is you do. Then Mark, and then we'll get into a broader discussion here.
Well, 32 years ago, I had an experience that opened my mind, shall we say, and I started on a road of trying to understand and identify who was actually running the world and to what end, because it was clear to me back then that the powers that appeared to be running it weren't running it. And for the last more than 30 years, I've been pursuing that goal, and it's taken me into some extraordinarily, apparently bizarre information and situations. But unfortunately, with the passage of what we call time, they've turned out to be true.
And Mark, how about you?
Well, I would say similar to David, I also had a fairly unique life experience that led me to understand who was actually running our world. And as your listeners know, because I've been interviewed many times on your show in the past, Vinny, I became involved with the people behind the corridors of power, behind the ostensible people in public positions of power. I became involved in what many people would call nefarious secret societies. I have referred to it as the dark occult. I got involved with Satanism, and I subsequently realized that the people in the positions of power in every earthly institution are Satanists at the highest levels of these institutions who are running them, calling the shots. They are dark occultists. They are mind magicians, if you will. They're ancient psychologists who understand everything about the human mind, how to manipulate it, how to prey upon our emotions. And then when I understood that, I ceased my involvement in those organizations because I was not very high up in them. I was what you would call a rank and file member. And I have been blowing the whistle on Satanism and dark occultism as what is really the religion of the masters of our reality, of the masters of our world, for the last 15 years.
Okay, and so this is going to be an important discussion here because the thing that is coming on my mind is that better to be 3 hours too early than a minute too late. And I thought the show was going to be at 4 o'clock in the morning or something, so I was set an alarm for 3 a.m. Woke up in the old Indian remedy, drinking water before I went to bed at 2:56 a.m. And have been staying here. It is now 6 a.m. because I misread the time zone. So I am pleased that I've gotten to be woken up by Mark Passio. That's basically what's happened here while we've been waiting for David, and we've had some very intense discussions about it. Number one, let's think about the concept of peace and love versus police violence. David, can you speak to that idea? And this protest has already been moved on, and it has been absolutely destroyed and shattered. This is the New World Order as we're seeing it. Is peace and love and dancing and singing songs going to be enough to beat back this system, as these protesters falsely believed?
Well, it depends how it's expressed. It's interesting having Mark on the show because I've been looking over these years for the foundation from which all this is coming. It can seem very complex in the way it plays out, but there's always a simple behind the apparently complex. And what we're dealing with, and it plays out as the protesters you talk about, and it plays out as the brutality that's employed against them. Because we're looking, and I'm sure, Mark will talk in detail about this from his own experience. We're talking about two very different states of consciousness. And interestingly, when you look back and you look across the religions and the ancient cultures and all the different what we call historical stories and legends and accounts, they have a very obvious common theme. They call and use different names, but they're talking about the same thing. So in Christianity, you have the devil, Satan. In the Gnostic belief system, you have Yaldabaoth, their version of the devil, Satan, and they have their archons, rulers in Greek, as the Christians have their demons. In the North American, indigenous North American culture, they have Wetiko, which is they describe as a mind virus. And in the Islamic faith, you have Iblis and Satan. And you see this common theme everywhere you look of a very inverted, chaotic, what we would call evil consciousness. Evil for me is the absence of love. And this is the consciousness, the frequency band of perception, if you like, that is driving this entire conspiracy, always has, and is driving these front people like Ardern around the world now in pursuit of this grotesque agenda for humanity. So if we fall in to responding to that in the same way that it responds to us, then we become it. What you fight, you become. It's not about, fighting. It's about not cooperating, and it's about not having, not playing your part in your own enslavement. because in the end, you look at the numbers game and it's ridiculous. It's laughable how few are controlling and manipulating and directing so many. Now, when you have a situation like you've had in Wellington and we've seen in Ottawa and some other places, you are going to get the brutality from that which is, I'll use the term for this interview, Wetiko, the mind virus. You're going to get it. That's what it is. But we have to respond in a different way, and it's very challenging, because if you look at the world and the way it's structured, and you've gone seamlessly from the COVID to the COVID hoax to the invasion of Ukraine. All the time we are being given reasons to fear, and fear takes you into that low vibrational state that the native North Americans call Wetiko. And, it's a real challenge not to go there and not to fall into the same low vibrational emotional states as that which is imposing this stuff upon us. So we're going to have to, see that this brutality is going to happen. It's how we respond to it. And, in the end, like I say, it's a numbers game. If you look at the number of people in New Zealand who have imposed this fascism upon New Zealanders, and you look at how many New Zealanders there are by comparison, then, it's no good people just saying it's them. It can't be just them, because there's not enough of them. It's us as well. Over a long period, we've cooperated with our own enslavement. And now that enslavement is looking us in the eye, and people are now starting to see it. But, we have to stop cooperating with it. And if we don't, then, it's going to continue, because that's how we got here.
And for those of you watching on screen here, we're watching what happened approximately 6 days ago on the grounds of Wellington Parliament. And this was a very peaceful protest. And this turned into a riot after the police came in and did all this. And I made a point on a live stream before about malign intelligence. What happened just before all these police came down is there was a successful court case that meant that the police and the military didn't have the jabs mandated on them. Directly after that court case was upheld in their favour, 170 police returned to the workforce where previously they couldn't be police because they were unjabbed, and then they got sent down to Wellington to crush the resistance that was standing up for their right to not have to take the vaccine. But
that, Vinny, those police officers you're talking about, that's Wetiko. That's the Wetiko mentality. That's why they do that. I mean, if you are in your own power, if you're in your own innate intelligence, as opposed to a software program, which is what these people are in effect, then you look at the situation in and of itself on its merits. You look at it with justice. You look at it with fairness. You look at it with looking at it in terms of human dignity. And you don't do what you're told to do when what you're being told to do is against all those things. So, it's this. This is the foundation of everything. People behave as they do, whether it's the protesters being peaceful or whether it's the police being brutal. They behave as they do because they perceive as they do. This whole I'm sure Mark's got a lot to say on this. This whole foundation of global control is the control of human perception. we saw it so blatantly in these COVID years, and so we have to take our perceptions back. We have to start thinking for ourselves, and when we do, we have to stand up and not cooperate with that which is trying to get us to do something else. Because there's two types of people that have allowed every tyranny in history to happen. And one is the group that just does what they're told without question. I call them press enter people. And then there's another group that doesn't want to do it, but does it because it's frightened of the consequences of not doing it. Now, those two groups within the human family have been responsible for every tyranny in history, because tyranny is not imposed by the majority, it's imposed by the minority, and then the great numbers of people concede and acquiesce to that minority. And the third group, which is the one that's ended every tyranny in history, is the one that sees what's going on and then says, I'm not cooperating with it, that has this self-respect that is immovable. And when the brutality comes, well, you get up and you carry on and you carry on and you carry on, because the alternative is not carrying on, and that's unthinkable when you think where that will end.
Mark, could you speak to this issue as well, please?
I'll jump in on a few of these dynamics. The first is love, which you brought up. How do you react in a consciousness that is higher vibration than what you're seeing? And that is speaking out. That is explaining to people that this is wrong. This is the very foundation of my work. Once I realized that occultists, who are ancient psychologists, are manipulating people into a consciousness of fear all day long through the media, through all of their propaganda, you realize you have one of two choices. You can stay in that fear vibration that they're pumping out every single day, or you could raise your own consciousness by acknowledging the truth and delving deeper into the information about how the world is actually run and how the power structure works and how their mind manipulation techniques actually work. And that is the love consciousness. That is the love vibration. Love isn't like just wishy-washy, mushy, romantic love. We're talking about love from a consciousness. Yes, from a consciousness perspective. Love can be tough love with another person who is doing things that are wrong. Love can be looking at things that are very, very, very dark to look at, but you know that you have to be aware of them if you're going to take right action in the world and help to influence others to do the same. And the other dynamic that I'd like to talk about is self-respect, as David brought up. These agents of the system of control, these agents of the state, they're devoid of self-respect. To be an order follower, there is no possibility that you can have any deeply ingrained self-respect in your psychology. It has to have been beaten out of you in order for you to follow orders unquestioningly. These people who David referred to them very rightly as press enter people, meaning they're a software program. You hit enter on the keyboard and then it executes. And they're much like that. They're robotic minds. But I call them order followers because this is, as David said, this is the group of people who historically, throughout the whole history of the world, is responsible for every single totalitarian regime that has ever existed. We call it a police state in the modern verbiage. We don't or a totalitarian regime, but a police state is named as such because it's named after the people who actually bring it into physical manifestation. And this is another thing that most human beings still don't understand. If you have the discussion with them, if there's an order being given by an order giver, and then the order is very, very evil, and it's then carried out by the order follower, not to say that both parties are not morally culpable and responsible to harm that results, but who's even more morally culpable? The one who just spoke the order out and said, carry out this action that I want you to carry out, or the person who actually does the action with their own body and brings it into physical manifestation in the world through their own behavior? I would say, and have been saying for many, many years, that the order follower is the bearer of the most moral culpability in that situation. And how love can be applied to that whole situation is through parental proper raising of a child and giving if the parent learns true objective morality and the difference between right behavior and wrong behavior for themselves, then they're in an empowered position to teach that morality to a child. And that form of love coming down from a parent to a child will ensure that they don't become violent order followers when they get older. Unfortunately, that process takes, as you and I were discussing pre-show, Vinny, generations, at least a whole generation of time. And the problem is that look at how much damage has occurred in just 2 years. A generation is approximately 20 years when it comes to, humanity. Imagine how much damage these order followers can do in that period of time. So that form of love could make less people go into these institutions and want to be somebody who doesn't think for themselves, who doesn't judge what is morally right or wrong for themselves, and who just wants to listen to somebody else tell them what to do because they lack deep-seated self-respect in their own heart and their own psyche. So that's a long-term solution. Yes.
Apropos that, and sorry to interrupt, but just a quick thing here. Had a lot of reports from people around this country who with children who are just about to enter the police. And overwhelmingly, a lot of them have seen this footage of the New Zealand police doing what they're doing and said, "Nah, Mum, I don't want to be a cop anymore. Never."
Imagine the irony, Vinny and David, of this group of people basically saying, we don't want this for ourselves, right? But we'll do it to other people. We'll take away your voice. We'll take away your right to speak out. Whether you agree with political protest or not, I really personally don't, because as an anarchist and one who rejects authority of any group of people over any other group of people, I don't really consider petitioning people who claim to be authorities. I don't accept their authority at all. Therefore, I wouldn't personally petition the government for anything. My rights are my own by birth because they're not given to me by mankind. They're granted by the creator of the universe, and therefore they can't really in nature be taken away. They're an entitlement and a birthright. However, in the de facto actions of these police, they are completely obviously raping people's rights to assemble, to speak out, to air grievances and have their grievances be heard. So I support those freedom of speech rights and those freedom of assembly rights, of course. As far as effectiveness of changing the minds of the ruling class and the occult class, obviously that they're not going to come to much. But imagine just the irony of these people saying, "Oh, it's great that we don't have to take these vaccines, but we're going to break up a protest about vaccine passports. It is rules for thee and not for me." And this shows you how divisive their consciousness is and how much they have been given an us versus them mentality. And that's what people have to work on to change and explain to these police and other order followers. You're in the same situation as everybody else. You're enslaving yourself. You're enslaving your own children. You're enslaving future generations by your actions and your behavior. And I don't think many of them are even at a level of consciousness where they even perceive that or care at this point. And that is, again, how love, true love of humanity and of truth can be brought to these people if enough people speak out and speak to them and figure out a way to reach them and reach their damaged psychology and attempt to help them to heal their traumas that led them into the situation that they're currently in. Again, it's a shame that they're in that situation, but their decisions, their mentation and their behavior ultimately put them there to get out of that situation as order followers, and the fear that all brings from not complying with the orders and, oh, what might happen to me if I refuse. That trauma, has to be worked through. And that's, again, how I feel love can be part of the solution, but only if enough people speak out and engage these dynamics. So far, we're seeing very, very few people willing to speak out on this. truthfully and out in the open without fear. We need a lot more people doing that, and then maybe we'll see the dynamic of order following start to, see that what they're doing is enslaving themselves equally as enslaving anybody else that they think they have control over. They don't have any control. The control only exists in the mind through perception, as David said. Once the perception that there is no such thing as morally legitimate authority vested in humanity, that perception that these people have any power will go away practically overnight if people can make that connection mentally.
I'm going to go take this to you, David, and there's an old story. There was once a man who tried to change the world, but the world was too big, so he failed. So he tried to change his country, failed at that too. Tried to change his city, couldn't do it. So he tried to change his family, and they wouldn't listen to him. If only he'd changed himself. His family would have seen his good example, helped him change the city changed the country, and the country, the world. It starts from within, you, the individual, making a choice, being a good example. Which is great, which is good, because we've got two very good examples of people on this show right now. David, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to make a couple of points about what Mark said. First of all, a definition of love: doing what you know to be right. What we call love, which is absolutely lost its meaning in the human perception, it's equated with attraction and all that stuff. But in its deeper, greater sense, it's doing what you know to be right. So, people go through this checklist of consequences. I know what I should do. I know what is the right thing to do. But checklist, what are the consequences for me? Well, love won't do that. It just does what it knows to be right. And the consequences take care of themselves. Because to consider consequences is to consider not doing what you know to be right. And this level of love will never do that. And the other thing that Mark was saying there, which I completely agree with, what is the point of demanding that authority changes when it's not going to change? It's not there to change. It's there to impose its will upon you. And if you try to go through the system, well, the system's rigged. The courts are rigged. The whole thing's rigged. The dynamic surely is one of mathematics. People say, what are the solutions? Well, get yourself a calculator. Work out how many people are imposing this and how many people are allowing it to be imposed upon them. And what has to change is the dynamic between that which, if you like, runs society and that which is society. Because what happens at the moment is those in authority decide and dictate, and then the population respond and react. They might react with a protest, or overwhelmingly they'll react by doing what they're told, even though they don't want to do it. But that's the dynamic. Authority says, the population respond. And we need to switch that. So authority, as it exists today, has to respond to the population. And that can only happen when the population stop acquiescing with the diktats of the few. So if they come out of the New Zealand Parliament or Downing Street or the White House and they say, we've had a discussion, this is what we decided is going to happen. If enough of the population say, not we're going to protest about this, but we simply aren't going to bloody do it, then it's unenforceable. We started in the spring of 2020 with minor protests in Britain, in London, because people bought the idea there was a deadly virus, and they kind of just meekly went under house arrest. And the police moved in and they just took over and arrested the people, and that was the end of it. And then by the August, September of 2020, a lot of people in Britain anyway, in England particularly, had started to suss there's something not right here. And we were getting 35,000, 45,000 in Trafalgar Square. By the spring of 2021, the multitudes were on the streets of London. And the police, who were just picking people off when it started, oh, arrest him, take him away, that's done, it's all sorted, there you go. They were just standing on the side of the road watching us go past because there's just too many people. And the authorities were having to respond to us rather than us respond to authority. And it's staring us in the face. There's a video on, you can see it on the internet. It's called The Tiny Dot. And it's basically showing the number relationship between those imposing their authority on America, and not least the inland revenue or the internal revenue, as they call it in America, upon the people. And the number dynamic is just insane. I do recommend it. Have a look at it. I saw it a long time ago. And this is what's staring us in the face. But because of this second group that doesn't want to do it, but is frightened of not doing it, this imposition is allowed to happen. If that group that can see some of it and doesn't want to do it just move to the group that says, I can see it and I'm not cooperating with it, then the whole thing would start to unravel because there'd just be too many people. It'd be unenforceable.
What I often wonder about is the people who are following their orders like a good robot and who are actively bringing violence to the average person on the street who simply wants their rights respected. They want their rights to be intact. They want to be left alone. They don't want to have violence imposed upon them. They don't want to have their speech restricted, etc. Have they never, even in pop culture, seen movies that depict totalitarian regimes? And when they see them, do they think, oh, that's a good thing? Oh, I want the world to be like that. That's the kind of world I want to live in. Like, what do they think is going to be the result of their behavior? And how bad of a human being in their heart and mind could they possibly be? Nobody is that stupid. These people have to have some innate capability to project. If I continue to do this and the world continues to go down this path, it is going to become a dystopian nightmare as depicted in different, Hollywood fiction stories. So, money is that important to them. They feel just that paycheck. That's how much they're in fear that I can't do anything else. I have no other talent. I have no other capability. This is all I can do for the rest of my existence as a human being. And why aren't more people expressing this dynamic to them? You don't have to continue to do these things. You can quit. There are other jobs. You can do other things. This is not all you are, quote unquote, qualified to do as a human being. We don't need this. This isn't required. That's the other perception that has to change in humanity, that we need policing, that we need the so-called protection that military provides, right? And people will hear this, and a lot of people will try to interpret this as, oh, you're siding with the left. I'm not siding with either political persuasion, left nor right, okay? I am saying that these institutions of control only hold humanity back from forward progress in our evolutionary development as beings, as a species. And I'm just throwing out the question, how could these people possibly interpret anything they're doing as being the right thing? And that then would lead you, if you realize that's virtually impossible, to just think they just don't care. All that matters to them is creature comfort and survival. And that's base reptilian consciousness. That is reptilian brain, brainstem, cerebellum based consciousness in the brain. And that level of consciousness, they will basically take on the notion, as long as I'm fed to the great beast last, fine, I'll feed everybody else to the great beast first before I go in its gaping maw, and that's what I feel. We have to sit down and have the discussion with these people, because they're like a segregated cult in our society. I mean, let's face it. How many people interact on a daily basis with police and military people? They have their own places that they go to. They have even their own pubs or bars where it's only cops that go to. They have barracks that the military go to in bases. They're segregated largely from the rest of society. We have to engage these people's minds and be like, what, and say to them, like, what are you doing? What do you think you're doing? Do you think you're helping any dynamic that you could possibly imagine? You actually believe that you're on the right side of history? You actually believe you're one of the good guys? You actually believe that society wants you to do this? You don't believe that people look at you with disgust? I'm a person who does no harm to other people. I do not harm, defraud, or damage anybody or their property. And I don't like these people from a personal standpoint. I won't even for now use the word hate. I try to not say I hate somebody at a totally soul level. I hate what they're doing. I hate their behavior, right? But, people have to understand, until we engage these order followers ourselves and speak to them about the immorality of their behavior. And, you could look at that as, quote, shaming them. I don't even look at it like that. It's sitting down and having a one-to-one conversation with them to say, do you actually believe that you are a good person as a result of following the orders that you're given? How could you possibly believe that? And if they then come back and say, I only do it for the pay, then what has to be told to them is, do you believe that that makes you a good person? Do good people do bad things for a paycheck just because they can't imagine in their own mind what other job they may be able to do for a paycheck? That they have to understand they're the bad guys. See, that they actually believe or want to believe in their own mind they're the good guys. But people have to start telling them out in the open, instead of saying, I'm proud of your service, or I'm glad you went into this, or you have such a great job. People have to start telling them, you're the bad guys. You've always been the bad guys. Every civilization in human history that went down the path of totalitarianism, police and military took them down that path by their behavior. They've always been the bad guys. They've never been the good guys. And that is because they are believing in and carrying out the concept that one human being or a group of human beings has power and authority to command the behavior and bring the behavior of other people into alignment with their own personal will, even if they don't want to do that, and even if what the person who's commanding it is morally wrong. How don't they understand, and how don't most of humanity by this point in our history and our development as a species understand the concept that authority was never moral, ever in the history of humanity? Kingship was never moral. There has been no king that claims authority over others as his subjects that was ever a moral being. No one who is moral would do that, because a moral person doesn't try to impose their will violently upon another. That's called coercion. And that is the basis of all forms of slavery. See, that is what still is not the connection mentally has not been made by either the order followers or the general public. All forms of authority is just a euphemism for slavery. Authority is slavery. Government is slavery. Kingship was slavery. And this is the new form of kingship, the oligarchy that is called government. It's just a new form of kingship, a new form of the belief in authority. This is supplanting the old religious, traditional religious systems and cultural religions, and this is the new religion. Government is the new religion, and it is slavery, and it's a death cult. That's what it really is, and that's what people have to make the mental connection, that all forms of government always have been, are now, and always will be, until we decide to understand the truth that all forms of authority of human over other human are morally illegitimate because they are based in coercion and violence.
Yeah, it's a death cult because it's an inversion. Everything that this consciousness that's driving these people is about is inversion. Therefore, it's anti-life. It's an inversion of life. So it's a death cult because it's anti-life. And I think one of the things I've been looking at over decades, because it became more and more obvious to me, going on from what you've just said, is how the dynamic between authority and uniform authority and the public has changed. I was born in 1952. I was brought up in England in the 1950s, not that long after the war, really. And there was obviously the same kind of structure was in place, but it was not even a fraction as extreme as it is now. And you had a police who used to go on what they called the beat. And they would walk through a community and they'd stop and they'd talk to the kids. How are you doing? And they'd talk to people in the street. And there was this interaction, this constant interaction. But what I've watched, and it's been systematic through, there's an organization that started in Britain, now operates worldwide, called Common Purpose, which means, common perception, that has been putting on training programs which use all the classic mind control techniques like groupthink and NLP. And they have systematically recruited two types of personality. One is that which has a little crack in their head where the software disk goes in, and they just do whatever they're told. They don't question anything. Well, my superior told me, so I've got to do it. It is more than my job's worth. And then you've got the others, which kind of lead it, and they're the psychopaths. They've been recruiting psychopaths. So because they've been preparing for this period for a very long time. That's why you've got so many buffoons in political power, because buffoons just do what they're told without question. And also from a psychological point of view, if you can put a buffoon in power and the people can see that they're a buffoon, but the people still do what the buffoon tells them, even though what the buffoon tells them to do is buffoonery, then you have wiped the self-respect of anyone who does that, and only submission remains. So this has been systematic recruitment of people through the Schwab operation that we've been hearing about for the political level of this. But in terms of the uniform enforcers of the buffoonery, it's been systematic also. There's a lot of psychopaths and a lot of press enter people who are now in uniform. And if you look at America, where they're saying, if you don't have the jab, you have to leave the military and all that stuff, and police forces as well in some places around the country. That again is targeting, as so many have been around the world, that mentality in uniform that does have these traits that Mark's talking about, that does say, hold on a minute, this isn't right. They don't want those people. They want rid of them. And to say, look, I'm not having this jab just because you tell me, is putting on public display that here is a personality that is not going to do whatever you tell them. This person has limits to what they will, in terms of orders, obey. And thus, that has been used to target those people because they don't want them in uniform. They want the psychopaths and they want the software minds in power, and that's in uniform, and that's all they want. And that's what you're seeing. I mean, I've seen it, in England, when I've seen these, the police at work over this 2 years or so. They're often, not always, but they're often people that are impossible to have a rational conversation with because they literally can't compute what you're trying to get across to them. The kind of things that Mark's just been saying.
Or as Little Britain would say, you'd say anything to them and it goes, computer says no.
Yeah, exactly that. And, we've seen videos, aren't we, coming out of the FBI and other places where part of this preparation has been to instill in the uniform law enforcement community that actually, instead of you are serving the public is the enemy. And this has been part of this dynamic switch. And now you're seeing the consequences of that. But again, there's not the numbers to enforce if enough people won't be enforced upon. And like Mark said, the numbers have to dramatically increase. It's fantastic. I mean, I've been doing this for 30 odd years. I mean, the number of people who are awakening to stuff now is phenomenal. But it needs to be beyond what we're seeing now by a long way before we really start impacting on this and make it impossible to enforce.
Let's think about this concept that we are facing right now in terms of emergency situations. Right now, there's a lot of people that are, including myself, in a stress response as a result of seeing footage and the uprisings being suppressed and things of that nature as we're going through. However, it's not exactly unexpected. Again, the problem is public consciousness. New Zealanders, in the main, are bad people, okay? And it's a very, very difficult thing to recognise that your own people, your countrymen, people you've been growing up with alongside your entire life, who, because they won't stand up, and even if they do stand up, won't follow these logical conclusions forward, that you are asking permission and beseeching the help of psychopathic child traffickers who want to exterminate you and enslave all future generations. Okay? That is a very, very big perception gap between what we're up against and where we currently are. Now, if the public consciousness is unwilling to deal with that reality and understand that they don't care what you think, it is not what you say, it is what you do. More to the point, I've said for a long time that a good man isn't necessarily defined by what he does. He's often defined by what he has the option to do that he refuses because it's wrong.
Just think about historically the populations that went down this path. If we ask ourselves and answer the question honestly, not based on like bias, if we say I'm going to look at this objectively and answer honestly, can anybody honestly claim that the actual population that preceded the rise to power of the Nazi regime in Germany was a moral population? Could they have been? Is it even possible for that group of people to actually be good people? And I'm not talking about like nice people who waved other people on the street, not talking about that. Good people, capital G, capital P, okay? What it really means to be good. And this is the problem, is that most people don't really know objectively what it means to be good. And ultimately what that means is bringing your behavior into alignment with natural law, meaning that you do not initiate behavior that causes harm to other sentient beings by way of violence, by way of assault, by way of taking people's rights away, by way of coercion, etc., by way of deception even. Could we say that the population rejected all of those immoral things and behaviors in its society as a whole, as a species? Yes, there were some, there were a few, but there were not enough in the aggregate to change the consciousness of the people of the former Weimar Republic not to go down the path of the Third Reich and become a totalitarian society ruled by psychopaths. And that is because that population did not actually become good people in adulthood. And that's the situation that we're facing really worldwide. If we honestly have to assess how many people really know what the difference between morally right behavior and morally wrong behavior really factually and objectively is. Most people don't. Most people can't tell you what a right is. Most people cannot define a right as an action that does not initiate harm to another sentient being, which is the correct definition of a right. Most people can't give you that definition. Most people cannot tell you what the wrongdoings are, that the wrongdoings that violate other people's rights are murder, assault, rape, theft, trespass, coercion, and deception. You know, these are the things that steal something from the value of someone else's life. They take that which we don't rightfully have the right to take. And that makes theft the only true form of harm, the only true form of wrongdoing. Every other wrongdoing can be boiled down to a form of theft or taking something that doesn't belong to you. Murder, the theft of life. Assault, the theft of well-being. Rape, the theft of free will association sexually. Coercion, the theft of free will, and on and on. And, the population is seemingly no closer to understanding the difference between right and wrong behavior and why we shouldn't initiate wrongful behavior and the consequences that brings societally as a whole in the aggregate than they were in the times that preceded the rise of the Third Reich or the rise of other totalitarian regimes like Soviet Russia or Red China, etc., and anywhere else that totalitarian regimes have regionally taken over, the whole culture of a segment of human society. So we have to change that dynamic. And, as David was saying, we're not close enough to that number. We need more people not just understanding what's going on. That's the first step. Obviously, that's important, right? You have to understand what's taking place. You've got to see the picture, right? But as David himself has said many times, just to know and to keep focusing on that is describing the prison that you're already in, when we want the key to get out of it. And the key to get out of it is speaking the truth to other people, is communication, saying it yourself so that more and more people hear the voice of the truth instead of hearing the voice of the lie 24 hours a day. More people have to get involved personally in that work to speak the truth to other people, to even speak the truth to order followers who are currently caught up in this evil participation in this evil system. And when more people take this so seriously that communication of this truth to other people becomes one of the major parts of their lives, as it has with us three, obviously, and many more. When we see more people engaging in that dynamic and really doing the work to communicate and publish this information and this knowledge about morality to other people, that's when we're going to see the worm start to turn. That's when we're going to see consciousness start to dramatically improve in the aggregate in human society and in the human species.
Yeah, I think the point that you're kind of making is that the population is overwhelmingly me-centric. We come back to what I said earlier about love being about doing what you know to be right. Not necessarily right for you in the moment in terms of the consequences of doing it, but what's right. And we have a me-centric mentality, which says every time, how does this affect me? Not what is the right thing to do? How does this affect me? And you are in a situation where everyone can list enough consequences for most people to say, I'd like to do what's right, but not that badly, thank you. And so they don't. And this is this second group I'm talking about. And we've got to get through that. And, part of that is to self-identify with the infinite I and not the human label I. Once you are identifying the I only with the labels of a human life and the human life that we appear to be experiencing, you label the labels of man, woman, sexuality, income bracket, background, class, and all this stuff. While we're doing that, it's again, very me-centric and very short-term, the 70 and you can see the world in a certain way, looking at it from that perspective and that timescale, where you're saying, well, how does this affect me? How's this going to affect my 70? Or you can say, well, I am an expression of infinite awareness, having a brief experience called human. And that infinite awareness is going to be exploring forever. And this is just a brief experience called human in this reality. And therefore, what happens to me in this 70 is not important compared with the great totality of who I am and the great totality of what is. And thus, you look at a consequence and that goes, oh my God, I can't do what's right because, oh, look what that will happen or might happen. Just all potential in your mind, most of it. Or you can look at it and say, it's just a brief experience, just another experience. And I'm going to do what I know to be right. And the experience that comes from that will come from that, but I'm going to do what I know to be right. And what you do is you lose that fear of authority. I mean, what is authority? What is it? Why have you got authority over me? Well, I'm wearing a uniform. Yeah, so first of all, you've got no authority. You think you've got authority. You think you have power. But your power is what you're wearing, not you. Take your uniform off. Okay, now where's your power? Gone. So these people are just pawns in a game they don't understand. And if we concede through fear of what might happen because of these people, we are going to not do what is necessary to bring an end to this nonsense. We're going to perpetuate it. Because, people say, what's the solution? I'm not interested in solutions. I'm interested in removing the cause of the problem. And the cause of the problem is human acquiescence to authority, either without question or fearing not doing so, and this me-centric mentality that says about everything, how is this going to affect me? If you could get rid of those two things and make people do what is right-centric as opposed to me-centric, and cease to cooperate with that which is enslaving, then the whole thing would fall apart. But of course, you've got to grow a pair, and you've got to grow a backbone, and you've got to find that essence within that will do that. And it is happening. I mean, there's more people now who are willing to do this, but it's not in the level yet that is capable of overturning the whole thing. There needs to be a lot more people. And one of the unfortunate things about human perception is, while there's a getaway car from doing what you know to be right, you'll take it. So over the years, people have said, well, look, this is what the plan is. This is where it's going. Conspiracy theory. No, conspiracy theory. So that's the getaway car. But what's happening is people are having less and less leeway now, not least look at what's happening in New Zealand, for the getaway car, because it's coming more and more in your face. And the reason that more and more people have woken up in the COVID era is because that's been put there. And unfortunately, for more and more people to go down that same road, it's got to get a lot worse. And the point is that there's going to reach a point eventually where there's so much control, not least technologically, that it's very difficult to turn it around, not least the AI connection to the human brain. So we are in a period where a long period of what we call the human future is being decided in these few years that we're living through.
The dynamic I'd like to speak to regarding that is what you referred to by the me society, the me-centric society. With people only considering the consequences for themselves, not considering what is right, full stop. This mentality of I only care about myself. I only care about the consequences for me. I don't really care what's right or wrong. I'm just going to do what advances my comfort in my life. And brings me the maximum prosperity, even if it's the wrong thing to do, is what I have been trying to explain to people for the past 15 years is the religion and ideology called Satanism. And people have it so backwards in what they think Satanism is. They think Satanism is just about worship of entities of the devil, which is a Christian concept and persona. They think it's about just performing rituals, etc. I am not saying that some Satanists aren't of that type of persuasion when it comes to their belief system, but coming from a person who was an actual priest in the Church of Satan, the organized religion, worldwide religion of Satanism, I can tell you that Satanism is that very me mentality. It has a lot of other beliefs and structure to it. I say that it has four basic overarching tenets, and those tenets are egotism, which again is me worldview, okay, and mindset. You could call that egoism or self-centrism, however you want to look at that. Then the second tenet is moral relativism, the very idea that there is no right or wrong. It's all relative. People can make it up. They can make up what's right and wrong in Afghanistan or Iraq or China or Russia. They could make up what's right and wrong in the United States, and people can live by all different subjective standards of morality. They believe morality is just a construct that exists in the mind, that it isn't action-based, that it isn't behaviorally based. So people can just make up. If it benefits me, that's what's right for me. If it doesn't do something that's good for me, well, then I'll consider that wrong. Instead of applying an objective moral standard of whether it initiates harm to other beings. The third tenet being social Darwinism. Satanists actually believe ideologically that there should be a master class, a ruling class, and a slave class. They're perfectly comfortable with that idea. They're perfectly comfortable with a hierarchical system of control. And many other people in the world are too. And that's because they've taken on this what I call mini-me Satanism, or another term you could apply to that is de facto Satanism. They are Satanists in their thoughts, and therefore, since their thoughts and their beliefs inform their behavior, they become Satanists in their deeds, which is what the Latin term de facto means, indeed. Out of their deeds, they are Satanists. You'll know them by their deeds. You'll know them by what they do. The fourth and final tenet is the final solution of eugenics, which is what we're seeing play out now with the whole, alleged vaccines, which are actually genetic modification experiments, human experimentation of genetic modification that's going to annihilate human immune systems worldwide. And that's what the Satanists believe in. The Satanists believe that they're God. They're going to become God on earth and rule everybody else. Right and wrong are just concepts we could basically throw out the window as long as the elite class comes out on top. They could do that because they're genetically and intellectually superior, and they'll even go to the point where they'll determine who gets to live or die through a process of eugenics. And they're very open and clear about these statements. They're not even hidden. They're not even in the closet about it anymore. They're coming out like organizations that are clearly part of the worldwide satanic hierarchical network of the satanic ideology, like the World Economic Forum and Schwab and his connections to the Bilderberg Group, coming out and saying things like you'll own nothing and you'll be happy, and that the Great Reset is about the reset of actual people and their bodies, and people will listen to them say that, and out in the open. The practical externalization of the hierarchy of control, and still insist, oh no, he has honorable intentions and is just trying to improve the world. These people are Satanists. I know because I worked with them on the inside. I don't know because I read about that in books. Although if you do read about that in books, the author is probably knows what they're talking about and is probably trying to warn you about what is true and how the power structure of the world really works. I'm not one of the people that knows about that through books. I know that from personal life experience around these people.
Well, very interesting what you've just said, because it fits in with what I've been going on about for ages and ages and ages. And that is that this, what I refer to as Wetiko, this consciousness that's ultimately driving all these people, which is why they are as they are, it's seeking to infuse itself into the human population. So the human population becomes an expression of it. It's like assimilation. And so it's no surprise that you have quite a widespread human trait of me-centric perception, while the world is being controlled by a completely me-centric perception. And if we fall into these low vibrational perceptual states and emotional states, we're falling into the frequency band of this consciousness that's driving these people. And not only can it then feed off our energy, because we're producing energetic fields that are in its frequency and it can absorb them, but we're also allowing this frequency attachment to take place because we're operating in its frequency domain, through which we can become that which is controlling us. And, when I look at the woke mentality, which is a completely created mentality by the billionaires of this global death cult, it's completely me-centric, and it has this perception that it is right. It is right. And because it is right, anyone that says anything different is by definition wrong. And if they're wrong, what's the point in them having freedom of speech? Because they're wrong. Who wants to hear that? Why should they be allowed to talk about it? It's wrong. And I do see this satanic mentality playing out through what I call it, well, what is called the woke mentality. And so you have this like Orwellian 2 minutes of hate all the time, wherever you look. So so-called anti-vaxxers, you hate them, hate the anti-vaxxers. And we've seen it seamlessly move to hate Russians for being Russian. And this whole woke agenda in all its forms, human caused climate change, all of it, is the agenda of this death cult, and its advocates are becoming personifications of it.
And the media can just move people practically seamlessly because of their knowledge of the human psyche and how to manipulate it, which comes from the occultists who ultimately own the media organizations. When is, the next group that you're targeted to hate, hate Muslims because of 9/11, hate, the unvaccinated, hate Russians. As you said, they can swing people's perceptions, like a pendulum whenever they want, because
This is,
again, they're yeah.
this is where the unconsciousness comes in. I watch people, particularly this first group, the presenter people, and obviously so much of their perception and manifest behavior comes from subliminal subconscious programming, but it comes out of the subconscious and becomes an unconscious behavior. There is no conscious intervention that says, well, hold on a minute, can I just ask some questions about this before I unconsciously do what you're telling me? So if you look at the woke mentality, it is a subconscious, unconscious perceptual state where they're basically sleepwalking without any intervention of the conscious mind saying, hold on a minute, I want to ask some questions. So human caused climate change is this existential threat to humanity. That is accepted without question. COVID is a deadly virus, and you have to wear masks and have the vax to protect from it. That is without question. And this is why, as you know, we know, you can put as much evidence in front of that mentality as you want, but it won't change its mind because it hasn't got one. It's just an extension of another mind that it doesn't even know that it's an extension of. And when you see people who are awakening, this third group, they are intervening with consciousness, the conscious level. And they're saying, well, hold on a minute, before this process continues like it's going with these people, I want to ask some bloody questions. So those that have not had the jab are those that have said, hold on, I want to know more about this before I make a decision. Oh my God, have you seen what's in it? I'm not having this. Whereas this group just doesn't go through that process at all. It's completely unconscious. And so when you're unconscious, you cannot see contradiction. And therefore, the contradiction, for instance, of being anti-racist and at the same time attacking and hating Russians for the crime of being Russian, whoever they are, whatever their background is, that is done without any perception of contradiction between anti-racism and racism. This is why you see this extraordinary level of racism against white people today, by people who claim to be anti-racist, because it's an unconscious response in which there is no conscious mind intervention, which can actually see the contradiction and say, well, hold on a minute, I'm saying this and I'm saying that don't make sense. They don't have minds that speak to themselves. They just have minds that play out what they are programmed to do. And that's why it's the people who are intervening in this process and asking the questions and asking for the evidence. That's one of the key reasons why they see the world in a completely different way.
I think
I'd like to bring up. Sorry, go ahead,
if I may, it's kind of like they've been detached from higher consciousness. Like everybody is born with a direct attachment to higher consciousness, and then over a period of time, no, don't do that. Don't think that. Don't do this. Don't do that. No. You'll never make a career doing that. No. I don't care if you love it. You got to do this. And before you know it, your entire consciousness and all the inspiration that normally comes to you isn't there anymore. And all you have is these things that you've been told, these things that you think you know, and your brain doesn't speak to you anymore. It's like you've pissed your own mind off so much with you that it refuses to communicate anymore, right? And I was thinking about this. Yuri Bezmenov, the KGB whistleblower who came out, interviewed with G. Edward Griffin on The Reality Zone, and I believe this is 1984, 1987, I forget exactly which. He says that when the process of demoralization is complete, you will be able to prove black and black, white is white, and they will not be able to see it no matter what methodology that you use to convince them, because they have been completely demoralized. They've been removed of their moral conscience, their connection to in any higher consciousness, and thus the process of demoralization is complete, he said, and irreversible.
Yep.
You know, Vinny, you've hit on a real vital point there. Again, something I've been going on about for a long time. I'm sure Mark has as well. And that is the whole foundation of human control is to isolate perception and attention in the five senses, basically what I call body mind, and disconnect the influence of expanded states of awareness. Because if you can isolate people in this realm, if you like, then if you control the sources of information, then you can program via that information, this isolated state of awareness, the programmed perceptions that will get the programmed behavior that suit your agenda of control. And what happens when people so-called awaken? What are they awakening from? They're awakening from this five sense alone Alcatraz into expanded levels of awareness that these cultists cannot control because it's beyond their vibrational realm. And that's why people who go through that awakening start to see the world differently than they did before, because they're getting insights and awareness and perceptions and intuitive knowing from levels of awareness that this Wetiko cannot impose an influence upon. So the whole idea of Wetiko is to isolate the lower mind, for want of a phrase, from expanded awareness, and then completely submerge that lower mind in a perception that leads to the behavior, which leads to the control system that we see.
That is exactly how our reality is controlled, from the level of available information. And the information that people are getting are all coming from these sorcerers of consciousness, these dark occultists who own the media organizations. And these people will watch the news, they'll listen to the media and think that they're informed about the nature of reality, and they have the information that they need to make informed judgments and informed decisions in life about what they will then do. See, that I have a slide in my work called How Our Reality is Built. And it starts with knowledge or lack thereof, availability of information, and one taking it in and aggregating it and coalescing it. But then you have to build some more steps on top of that. This is the trivium process, and this is the tool for people who have not yet lived a self-examined life. That's what we're talking about here. These Wetiko minds, these order followers, they are leading an unexamined life. They're leading a life where they never actually stop from their grind, from their programmed reality, the consciousness that's been put into that prison, that box, and ask the questions that need to be asked, like, is this right? Should I be doing this? Is this coming from a place of true love and betterment for humanity, or is this coming from a place of fear and it's going to lead to total destruction? Asking themselves, should I just do what is right regardless of short-term consequence, or am I the kind of person who doesn't have that level of courage and I'm just going to continue to do what's wrong and double down? See, this all stems from the removal of the ability to break down information and process it logically and then do what's right with it. And that is largely due to the control of the education, so-called, what's laughingly called the education system in our world, because the process of truth discovery that was available to people in the ancient world, the trivium, was largely or almost entirely in just about every school system removed. Because above that level of knowledge, that the data gathering step of the trivium, in the middle you have that processing stage where you're logically filtering the data set This is, known as the logic stage of the trivium, or understanding in the ancient trivium. It's not only good enough to have the knowledge, right, to have the data. You have to understand it. You have to weed out all the logical inconsistencies. And as David said, that's what the whole satanic mindset is preventing people from being able to do, from being able to see contradiction and to weed out logical inconsistencies. Then, of course, the third step is wisdom. It's right action. It's the rhetoric stage of the trivium process. And that's doing the right thing with what you have come to know and to understand in the previous two steps. Then you have the manifested result. Either good manifests or evil manifests, either order manifests or chaos manifests, depending on what you did with all of the information that you took in, whether you understood it or not, whether you acted rightly upon it or not. If you think about it and you look at the actual steps, it's very common sense knowledge, but unfortunately common sense isn't too widely available in our world these days. This is a tool set. Yeah,
I call it platinum sense, so the rarest element on earth. But go ahead. Go ahead.
This is the tool sets that I think we could help people to understand. Right, the person who has to this point led an unexamined life, right, may not be 100% resistant to examining, but they may not have the tool set. So this is like what psychoanalysts do, what psychologists do. They provide the tools or the mechanisms for allowing the person to go through the things that they need to go through psychologically to begin the healing process. And that's what we kind of need to do. We need to bring these two major tool sets to people, in my estimation, and that is the trivium, which is the true process of truth discovery. It is the thing that is the true scientific methodology, as opposed to what we even laughingly call science these days, which is all money-based and government grant money-based science. But that trivium process has to be rediscovered in the modern world and then put into practice. Then we'll have a population that's actually capable of true education, of leading themselves out of darkness, which is what education really means. And then the second tool set that I think needs to be introduced to people is shadow work. This is occult psychology, ultimately. And the shadow work is basically self-diagnosis, confrontation with the problem psychologically that is nested in the psyche as a virus, as a mind virus, and then engaging it, and then working through that trauma. So it's diagnosing it, it's directly engaging it, and then it's the healing process of working through that trauma as an adult. As the popular phrase goes, none of these people are responsible for the traumas that they underwent during childhood, which most likely turned them into these types of people who are uncaring, people living unexamined lives, doing what they're told, even if it's wrong. If they do that shadow work, right, they can go through the process of healing it. And then that's their responsibility as an adult, right? The traumas that are done to you as a child, you're not responsible for them being done to you. But as an adult, you are responsible for handling them and healing them and moving forward, so that you don't continue that trauma victim cycle and perpetuate the trauma to other people in life.
Others can't hear you largely. Sorry, go ahead, David.
Yeah, the unexamined life is a very good phrase, because that's that unconsciousness that I was talking about, where people just unconsciously follow behavior traits without ever questioning why they're doing it. But another important point is that what you were making is that the control of knowledge, control of information, means control of perception, and control of perception means control of behavior. And so you've got these two worlds. You've got the world of the death cult, and why are these secret societies secret? Well, to keep secrets. Yeah, who from? The population. And so you've got two streams of knowledge communication. You've got that which the population has, and that's not about knowledge, that's about programming. So this is why they've the same death cult created what we laughingly call the education system, like you mentioned, Mark, there. It controls the media. What is the media? It's pouring out information to manipulate perception. Everywhere you look, we're being the population's being bombarded with perceptual impulses so that they perceive a certain way, and in a very limited terms, what I call the postage stamp consensus that humans follow. And then on this other world, you've got the secret societies, what the inner core of them, where this greater knowledge about reality and how it works and how the psyche works, which of course is that's their real gift. It's not expanded awareness, it's the gift of understanding how the psyche works, how you can manipulate it. And that's passed on through the secret society networks to those chosen to have it. And so you've got this massive chasm between what the population is allowed to know and thus perceive and what this inner core is allowed to know. And of course, what we're doing, what we've been trying to do all these years, is take knowledge that is known here and put it before the population. But of course, as we again know, this is so fantastic compared with what the population is told as reality that often they just laugh at you and dismiss you. Oh, God, that's never happening. That's ridiculous. That's mad. That's crazy.
That actually happened to me one time. I was talking to a guy and I told him about the Rothschild family. And he goes, "No, that's just fantastic." And I go, "Well, it's more fabulous." But anyway, go ahead, David.
I know it's, but this is the other point about the unconsciousness, Vinny, is that they say it's fantastic, but they don't want to pursue the information to see if there's any validity in it. The dismissal is the end of the story.
Yeah.
There's no, well, that sounds fantastic, mate, but give me the evidence. No, that's fantastic. So that's the end of the story. What are we going to do now? And this is the unconsciousness that so much of humanity allows to drive its behavior and drive its perception.
The idea of condemnation without investigation first being the height of human ignorance, without looking into it. That's why I say at the beginning of all of my work, it's not about belief. Belief is the destruction of knowledge. It's taking something without examining it first, and again, weeding out those logical inconsistencies and coming to an accurate understanding of truth about its nature. And I would never ask anyone to do that. That's not education. That's indoctrination and perceptual control. I tell people you need to investigate this on your own. And come to your own conclusions through the data. The data will bring the truth, and if people have that at their disposal and through the mechanism of the internet, they do, or at least you could say they did, because things are rapidly being censored in this regard because they're rushing to close societies down worldwide.
Yeah, I did a chorus in a song that was nobody reads books, so they're burning the internet.
Yeah. Right. That's part of the whole agenda now is internet censorship. That's why I do think that technologies that make, data put on the internet to be uncensorable, what they're calling Web 3.0, decentralized and encrypted data transactions, being the part of what they call the permanent web. Web 3.0 is going to have a lot of permanent features in it, where if you want something uploaded, it cannot be taken down. And so then discernment would have to obviously be exercised as to, if you really don't want some data uploaded, do not upload it to Web 3.0 because it's not going to be able to be removed from blockchain-based systems. But I think if we use that technology wisely, it can be a foundation for preserving knowledge so that it can't be burned, so that it can't be censored, because that's their agenda now. When they realize that some people are waking up from the state of thrall and the state of trance that they have been in their whole lives, and taking a peek around and saying, "Whoa, look! I understand what's been going on now." And not a huge portion are, but some are, certainly many, many more than decades ago. the controllers now are worried to the extent that there's a data leak in their system, and people are going to alternative sources of information and aggregating that knowledge. And now they're moving into the realm of censorship to try to shut that process down, so the consciousness doesn't awaken fully.
I'd like to speak to that.
They're trying to make a situation where no one ever hears anything or sees anything that is not sanctioned by authority. And that's where necessity is the mother of invention must kick in. I mean, it already has. But if you notice, they say, well, if you don't like being censored by some private platform, then start your own. And then you start your own, and now they're coming after them. And not least through something in Britain called the Online Safety Bill, which is something very similar going through the Canadian Parliament, or trying to be pushed anyway, which is to use this term harm. You know, you're going to be seeing a lot of this, we already are, around the world, where something that you can say in the street because it's legal and lawful, you can't put on the internet because it's perceived by authority to be potentially harmful. And harmful is such a term that, you know, you make it whatever you want, that it gives them the excuse to take down what they don't want people to see. And this online safety bill in Britain, it's going through Parliament now, and it's got enough support to get through, easily enough support from the morons called MPs, means that the government broadcast censor, that's what it is, called Ofcom, it's so bad it was started by Tony Blair in 2001, will have the power to force people to take down content, and if they don't, to impose crippling, destroying fines and even jail. If Ofcom decides that something that is perfectly legal and perfectly lawful could potentially harm, and something similar using the same term and, you know, terminology is going through the Canadian Parliament as well. And so this is the next stage of the censorship. Harm is the key word.
Identical things are happening here in New Zealand, and I just have a number of points to raise on this, because I've said this on the show a number of times, so those who've long-time listeners might get annoyed, but I was on a show one time, and these hosts asked me, "So Vinny, is the world flat or is it round?" And I go, well, it's actually a holographic fractal projection of collective consciousness experiencing itself subjectively. And they were like, whoa, you know, and
you're going to celebrate, man.
And you know, it sounds complex, but you know, and it is, but it's not really that complicated. All right, now a hologram. I take a picture of us on the show right now, and I embed it into a hologram, then try to delete it. That whole picture's still there in the hologram. It's just half the resolution. You try to delete it again, same deal. Half the resolution, but the whole picture's still there. This is how memory works. You ever think you've forgotten somebody, and then you see somebody, or you experience something, and then the entire memory comes back full frame? It's because your memory is holographic. So is the entire universe and the structure of every cell and human and part of the body. And now a second part of the wave is a fractal. You look inside your finger, you'll find some cells. Inside those cells are other cells. Inside those cells are other cells. Inside those cells are other cells. Infinitely down the scale, to the point where we don't even have a measure of scale for it yet. And as above, so below. Going back up, you have a look at the planet that we're on, that looks like a cell structure. You zoom out to the galaxy that we're in, that looks like a cell structure. You have a look at the universe out beyond that, and then it's part of a much larger creature that we don't have a word for yet again. So nothing can be forgotten. Everything's a smaller or larger representation of something else, and we are the ones that are perceiving it, and we are the ones who are changing it via our actions in the material world, because matter has consciousness. They prove this with the double slit experiment. You know, they figured what would happen is if you shoot a proton gun through a little slot with some aluminium foil behind it, it's going to go bang, bang, and then figure out how that cell exploded. But it didn't. It went bang, and then turned into a wave pattern form on the back of the foil. And that means that the The proton got stage fright. It had consciousness. It reacted to the fact that it was being watched. And if the proton has consciousness, that means electrons, neutrons, even morons have consciousness. That means everything is conscious, at least in some way, shape, or form, and it's giving off some kind of perception, some kind of field that is in some very small ways affecting everything around them and contributing to the entirety of existence collectively. This is where we come in as fifth-dimensional creative beings. First dimension's a dot, second dimension's a line, third dimension's a box, fourth dimension's the box moving through time. The fifth dimension is the box beyond time and beyond space, and this is where all your thoughts are when you don't speak them out or you don't create them. Your job as a creative entity is to listen to those little thoughts that don't really exist, spend your fourth dimensional time willing them into the three-dimensional universe. Only there can they be seen by the others who are sharing this three-dimensional reality with you and be inspired enough to get their own fifth-dimensional thoughts that will carry through and change future generations. For as said, your job in life is to plant a tree whose shade you know you shall never get to sit beneath. Tell people the point of listening to this show is to stop listening to the show. Take what you need, okay? If you've been inspired enough, leave. Don't come back. Go out there and create this world in a way that suits you, that is unique to your own abilities, because you are the unique expression of you, and you rob the entirety of existence of its fullness and richness by watching somebody else doing something that you want to do and refuse to do it yourself. And you will become resentful of those people who create when you are not creating.
Life is not a passive movie floating by on a screen. We have to get actively engaged. And what you just described there, Vinny, so beautifully and poetically is what I refer to as doing the great work. The great work is first becoming aware of the nature of our existence here on Earth and that we're in a total control system of slavery. And the great work is about getting actively involved on that spiritual battlefield to help to end that slavery that is so immoral, but unfortunately is still going on. And that's what we implore to our viewers and listeners. Don't just be a passive observer. Don't just take it from us. Get actively involved, get on that battlefield, and do the great work yourselves. And that's when you're going to see the world again accelerate toward a true global awakening. We have very little time to mobilize that. That's why we're imploring you so deeply to get involved in that great work and help the effort, help the war effort, because we are actively within a spiritual war right now that there are very real world stakes that are going to be decided in the aftermath of this, and things can go to the negative. The positive outcome is not 100% guaranteed unless we use our willpower to bring it about. That's what our future evolution being self-guided. It's in our hands. It's according to our free will and our choices that we make daily in life, whether we're going to see the future that we say that we want to see, which is based in freedom and truth and goodness and is orderly and is going to be something to our maximum benefit and growth, or whether we're going to continue down this totalitarian path to a nightmarish future. The good news actually is that choice is in each and every one of our hands.
And just to cap off the trivium as well, you ask the questions who, what, when, where, how, and why, okay? Just like you're trying to find out a three-dimensional object, top, bottom, left, right, front, back, okay? This is how you get a solid view of reality. This is how you do your fact-checking. This is what journalism is about. But it goes further than that. You've got to figure out what it is you want to do in your life, ask the questions about it, who, what, when, where, why, how, and then once you've been doing it long enough, somebody will come up to you and ask you those questions. Who, what, when, where, why, how? And you'll be able to rattle off answers like... Then you're progressing to the second stage of the trivium, and this will stay ostensibly for the rest of your life, to teach what you know to others. Knowledge...
And that's what a purpose-driven life is all about. to find that purpose and have that drive our actions. Yes.
Knowledge you do not use is the definition of useless knowledge. Knowledge you do not pass on is the definition of a wasted existence.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about life is, if you break it down, it's real simple: choice and consequence, choice and consequence, choice and consequence. And it's important we acknowledge this force of manipulation, but it's also important that we don't point the finger in that direction and deny the responsibility for how it's possible to have the control that it does. That's down to us. We billions of people cannot be controlled by a relative few unless the billions of people allow it to happen. So it's not only about pointing out that which is manipulating, it's acknowledging the responsibility of that which is being manipulated, and therefore taking responsibility for how we got into this mess, and removing the cause of the problem by ceasing to make the choices that created the consequences we don't like, and therefore make different choices with different consequences. For instance, electing Jacinda Ardern has consequences, the consequences that have played out in New Zealand in the last 2 years. Everything is a choice, and the choice leads to the consequence. And sensible people realize that and make different choices, and therefore have different consequences. But if you go on making the same choices, you're going to have the same consequences. If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. And that's the cycle, the process that has to be broken. If we want to stop getting the same thing, we have to stop making the same choices.
I think we're wrestling with our own insanity, and it's fear. I was out on my deck one time and I was just like, I don't want to have complex post-traumatic stress anymore and have my heart rate and my fight or flight go off every time I see a police officer. What do I do about this? Little voice tells me, you've got to go through it again, Vinny. And I was like, okay, that's not going to be fun. And then 2 weeks later, I had my opportunity and did a protest outside of Television New Zealand, called out the snap lockdown that Jacinda Ardern put us in, and then they arrested me, even though I tried to comply with everything that they said. And even though we told the police that the protest was, we got set up and we got taken down. But in that moment, I didn't know who my friends were. I didn't know who my enemies were. After that moment, I did. All right? And the ability to deal with that trauma and that kind of thing, going through it again, that was one of the first acts of true courage that I've actually really made in my life. To know, I walked in there knowing I was probably going to be arrested, didn't want to, and I knew what would happen to me because I've got claustrophobia and complex post-traumatic stress. Try getting arrested and going into a police paddy wagon in that condition. Why did I do it? Because there's an old saying, if you want to expose a fascist, you have to make them act like it. Okay? And this reminds me of the story of the old Whakawi tribe in Africa. It's a little joke story about this little tribe of pygmies that live in the long grass. And they get lost a lot. And every now and again, one of them has to jump on the shoulders of the other and declare, we're the Whakawi. And one time, two guys were lost in the long grass. They've been separated from their tribe. And they hear a lion. And they made a gamble. One jumped up on the shoulders of the other and showed their position. The lion saw them, but their friends saw them too. This is about declaring our intention, because although you may not know precisely who your friends are or where the enemy is or what form they may take, once you do make that call that I don't care what the consequences are, this is what I'm going to do, that's when your friends show you that they're your friends. That's when they show up. and they usually get to you just before the lion, just as my friends got to me before the trauma of being arrested took me. You see?
I would say two things happen during that time period. Not only do people become inspired by your show of personal courage, which is what this is all ultimately about. This is about the development of courage to do the right thing and to speak out. Not only do those forces in the 3D physical world will be inspired and start to do the same thing and come to your assistance, but higher forces of the universe in consciousness will actually come to your aid and assistance as well. The creation itself has this mechanism built in that respects courage and sort of does not have respect for or respond nearly as well to cowardice. It wants to see the movement forward of consciousness. And when courage provides that, when courage assists in that process and it aligns itself to the higher will of creation, that higher will come to its assistance, because it recognizes that that lower form of consciousness, or I should say not lower, but the smaller holographic form of consciousness of the self, is aligning itself to what the higher level consciousness of creation wants to create. And so it will bring fortuitous circumstances, and it will bring just the right amount of support in that situation. And I wouldn't ask people to believe that because it's not a belief system. I would tell them when you do it, if you do it, you'll see that it's true. It will manifest in your life, just as I've said. All you have to do is do the actual real world experiment to do that. Get involved, have courage, speak out, and you'll see that the universe will come to your aid and assistance and help to support you and move you forward.
But that has to be the case, doesn't it? Because, again, we're talking about frequency. What is cowardice? It's an expression of fear. It's a very extreme expression of fear. And being overwhelmed by fear is a low vibrational state. Courage is what? It's doing what you know to be right. That's a high vibrational state, and thus it's going to connect you into higher vibrational levels of consciousness. And everything is perception becomes reality. And the other thing, from what you've just said, Vinny, is this Wetiko consciousness, in all its expressions through uniforms and politicians and all the rest of it, is something that needs to intimidate, because it is itself fear. Its modus operandi, its method of operation is fear, and intimidation is obviously a form of fear. And when you're not intimidated by it, it doesn't know what to do. You're out of its understanding zone, because it's full of intimidation and fear itself. It uses it against others to get what it wants. And when you're not, basically, when you don't take it seriously, when you laugh in its face, instead of being intimidated by it, you disarm it. And it loses its power over you once you don't take it seriously. Every time I see Klaus Schwab, I bloody laugh. He's a joke. Look at Bill Gates. Is there life on Bill Gates? I see no evidence. Anthony Fauci. You said everything is consciousness and everything is conscious. I agree, but I do doubt, sometimes Boris Johnson. And George Bush. You look at them, and what are we doing being intimidated by these people? They are buffoons. When we don't take them seriously, it disarms them, because their insecurity and you show me a control freak, I'll show you someone who's insecure. Because secure people don't have to control everything. They're quite happy in states of flux and uncalled outcomes and unknown outcomes, they're quite happy with that. It's part of the kind of, the mystery and the variety of life. But to a control freak, they're always seeking to placate their own insecurity. And that's why they want to control everything. That's why they want to control all sides, so they know the outcome before the game starts. And so it's important we don't give these people the power through intimidation, which is their vehicle of control. I mean, I think they're hilarious. I mean, Jacinda Ardern, I mean, I can't see her without laughing either. I mean, and then I think that she was elected. That makes it even more hilarious. And then you see Biden. Biden's obviously in a quite an advanced senile state, and he's president of the United States. Because what they're actually doing with that is they're saying to you, we can basically put anyone in power we like, and we're going to break the spirit and your respect for America by putting a complete and obvious moron in power. It's all psychological that's going on. But you look at Biden, how can you be intimidated by him? And all these people, I mean, Justin Trudeau, little boy in short trousers. You see this all the time. The important thing is not to let them intimidate you, not to let the big brute in the uniform, oh, I've got power. Oh, really? I think you're a prat. I mean, look at you. Look at you. You know, I mean, you haven't got two brain cells to rub together. I'm going to be intimidated by you. Are you having a laugh? And you disarm them by not taking them seriously, because their insecurity demands that they are taken seriously.
I thought about this. There's a little frog in Australia, and the way it defends itself is it sucks in a lot of air. It gets up to nearly 3 times its size, and then he just launches himself right at you when he feels threatened. All right, that's what these psychopaths are. Full of this air, and they're just launching themselves at you to try and get you to be scared of them, kind of thing. And going back to what Mark was saying about, basically, I've got a principle that I've unfortunately had to get used to, is that I don't have everything that I want, but everything I need comes to me exactly when I need it in the precise quantity that's required for me to continue doing my work. It's extraordinary. And it comes down to this principle, is that if you are being who you're supposed to be, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, the universe will respect you and will give you what you need in order to continue your great work. There was an Irishman one time, and he came up with this crazy idea that he was going to travel all the way from the north all the way to the bottom of the south of Ireland without $1. And he got almost to the south. Whenever he needed a lift would turn up. Whenever he needed a meal would turn up. Something or somebody somewhere along the lines, whenever he had the intention, I need this, there it was. But he started to doubt. He went into a restaurant where he was going to meet somebody. They called on the phone, and they didn't show up. So he left the restaurant, and he sat outside, and he kind of thought, am I doing the right thing here? Have I failed in this experiment? Then one of the waiters comes out and taps him on the shoulder and goes, what are you still waiting here for? And he goes, well, I need to have a meal, and the guy who was going to pay for it didn't show up. And he goes, oh, okay. Well, I saw you sitting down there and you were looking at the menu. Do you know what you want? And he goes, yeah. Do you know how much it was? And he goes, $27.50. And he goes, oh, yeah, here you go. Gave him the $27.50. All right. And like, let's project that outwards. We're up against the worst aliens, like both a noun and a verb. Alien. Everything that they are is alien to us, human, conscious beings. And they have this power, that perceived power. But if we are doing what we're supposed to be doing, I can guarantee you, this isn't a belief, this is just the truth. We will be successful.
Yeah, the thing is, Vinny, that, what you've just described is what this cult is seeking to desensitize us from. Once you're in 5 sense body mind perception alone, first of all, you see everything as apart from everything else. But you go into the realm of the random, you go into the realm of the luck or bad luck. But when you resensitize yourself to this constant interaction that we're involved in between ourselves and reality, which is the same thing, is seamless, then these things happen. And what the system, the five-centric system, is telling you is what you should want. Whereas expanded levels of awareness, like you say, know what you need. And what you need turns up when you are in tune with that level of reality. You don't have to really plan anything, really, in the end. It just happens. And it makes life an absolute adventure instead of the ordeal and the survival mode mechanism that most people live their lives by. We are amazing. Everything is amazing, but we have been manipulated to disconnect ourselves from the amazing, so we live in the mundane, and the mundane is controllable, the amazing is not.
It's a matter of shifting our perspective away from that me, satanic, selfish and egotistical based consciousness, which is not going to benefit anything that we say that we want. It's not going to benefit humanity as a whole. And we need to shift that toward a purpose-driven life that is geared toward a higher awareness of human freedom, a higher awareness of the advancement of our species as a whole, to look to something beyond ourselves and our own limited creature comforts. When we make that shift perceptually, from that low vibratory state of survival only, selfishness based consciousness, and as long as my creature comforts are fed, I don't care what happens to anyone else. When we shift from that toward, no, I'm going to care about the wider view of things. I'm going to care about truth. I'm going to care about freedom. I'm going to care about, the movement forward in consciousness of humanity, and make my life a purpose-driven one toward those objectives and goals, even if I don't see it within my lifetime. That's when we're going to see our own individual lives improve. And not just that, we're actually contributing toward the great work of ending slavery on this planet when we do those things. So that's the ultimate thing that people have to look at. How are you actively involved in that process? How are you, if you're not involved in it at all, if you're not doing anything to move things forward in this regard, can you say that you're not just being complicit and passively accepting what's going on, like watching a movie on a screen? I would say that's exactly what people who aren't doing anything are like. When we again get involved in that process, we're going to see things take off and really improve for our entire species. That's what people watching and listening have to understand. It's not just about us who have been doing this work for many years, David doing it for multiple decades. It's about you guys getting involved. Like Vinny said earlier, you need to watch stuff like this until you don't need to watch it anymore, and you know what you need to do until you're fulfilling your purpose in life. And that's what our purpose collectively really is to do.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Mark.
Yes.
You're not you and David and me, we're not motivational speakers. We're inspirational speakers, okay? The shit that we put into you forms a wellspring and then starts bursting forth from you when you don't need us to be there to encourage you anymore. You are your own wellspring of power. It's like, what was his name? Cliff High is going through such a horrible time right now. He's had so many people close to him die and people sick and things like that. Really horrible time. And there's one time I told him, Cliff, humanity's like a spring. You hold that spring down, it'll resist you every step of the way. You get the spring all the way down till the coils meet, it'll resist you so hard, and you have to keep the pressure on, otherwise it's just pop right off. And Cliff said, no, Vinny. Use an organic example. Humanity's like a water spring. Now, what happens when you try to push down water that is bursting through to the surface? It starts burrowing sideways through sand and through dirt and through rock, and then bursts through to the surface from place that you couldn't predict or comprehend. That's what humanity's spirit is truly like. And I said, touché.
Well said.
Cliff High's words, not mine. And this is another thing as well. Paying homage doesn't necessarily mean to replicate. I would never want to be David Icke. I want to be Alex Jones or Mark Passio. I want to be, and David Icke and Mark Passio have, in their works, helped me to fully understand myself more. That is the true purpose of their work, and that's why I respect them so. Not because I'm a follower or a fan or anything like that, but because I understand their true value, not only to me, but to all people. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your work, just in general.
Thanks,
Vinny, thank you for yours.
We were only supposed to be here for an hour. We just went over 2 hours. Thank you, David.
I never thought for a second, Vinny, it was going to be an hour.
Well, apparently he's more in tune with the higher consciousness than my schedule is. So there we go. It could be worse.
I think that place of gratitude is an excellent place to end it, because as bad as the current situation is, we do have to have that attitude of gratitude for what we have come to know, the position of knowledge that we have been able to be fortunate enough to be in, and the role that we are now playing in helping others to awaken. That we should definitely be grateful that we're in that position of service to the all. So I want to thank you for everything that you've done, David, over the years. You're probably the most courageous individual that I know of, and I want to thank you for your instrumental role in my own personal awakening. And I just wanted to say that publicly. And Vinny, thank you so much for inviting me onto the show today to be part of this great discussion. And thank you for the work that you continue to do.
Yeah, here. Thanks for what you do, Mark, and thanks for what you do, Vinny. And we keep on keeping on.
Yeah. It's like I remember Luke Hurley, a famous New Zealand guitarist, having a jam one time at Cafe 1-to-1 in Ponsonby. And he goes, hey, are you Vinny Eastwood? And I go, yeah. And he goes, oh my God, I love you, bro. I've just got a question to ask you, though. With doing what you're doing, do you think you're putting yourself in danger? And I went, well, one can only hope. Otherwise, what the hell is the point? You know, I mean, like I say, gentlemen, the point of the show is to stop listening to the show, gain the inspiration that you need to become your own wellspring, and then get out there and start changing the world and making it a better place on your own, using your own unique talents and skills and gifts. Don't try to copy unless you haven't got any other ideas yet. And once you start copying people that inspire you, eventually you will find your own voice that becomes clearer and more resonant. You can leave your inspirations behind and stop putting them on pedestals that make you eventually resentful of them when you realize that they're flawed human beings with their own problems that they're dealing with also. We all do what we can with what we have. That is the obligation upon each and every one of us. Now, I would also like to, before we go, encourage people to support the Vinny Eastwood Show financially if you can. thevinnieeastwoodshow.com/donate.html. That's Vinny with a Y, because it's the most important question. And if you donate, you can request a guest, have a private call with me, and you might be able to get my help on a media project or idea that you've got. You know anybody else who's made 6,000 videos in 15 years with 2,000 of the most interesting people in the world, and and done every single format of media that currently exists, from music to talk radio to movies and video and all of that kind of thing. I can teach you a lot in a very, very short period of time with no bullshit. So if you want to donate and you do want to learn, there is an option there. Additionally, thank you very much to holdenhealthcare.com. Even when I was busted and not even broadcasting for months because of my things, these guys still kept sponsoring me. All right, because they believe in the work that we're doing. And I think this is a of support that I'm very, very grateful to my listeners and my sponsors. Here's reopen.nz, and here's the thing. I can't do it all. Mark can't do it all. David can't do it all. We all do what we do, that kind of thing. And as I said earlier, gratitude, okay? Don't be resentful that somebody's doing something that you want to do. Be grateful that they are, and give you the possibility so that you might get off your ass and do it too. It's not that hard, okay? All it requires is your action. And thank you so much for all of you who do take action. Thank you for those of you who aren't currently listening to the show because you're too busy making the world a better place. Thank you to all of those people who have been donating with automatic payments to this show for like over a decade. People who I can talk to. You know, I can just call up my listeners and my sponsors and all of this kind of thing. There aren't really that many terrible people who listen and participate in this kind of movement, but there are a lot of traumatized people, and they need love, just as we all do. And sometimes it's very difficult for me as a comedian to maintain that happy veneer when we are faced with what we face. And it's likened to the old joke. Man goes to a doctor, says he's depressed, says he feels all alone in a threatening world, and life seems harsh and cruel. The doctor says treatment is simple. The great clown Pagliacci is in town. Go see him. That should pick you up. Man bursts into tears. But doctor, he cried, I am Pagliacci. All right, and with that being said, thank you very much, ladies, gentlemen, slaves of the global plantation. The Vinny Eastwood Show is bad news. It's like the news, but worse. It's the lighter side of genocide. Just because we're being exterminated doesn't mean we can't enjoy it. Otherwise, what's the point of being killed? The Vinny Eastwood Show, where the only thing worse than living in a high-tech global police state run by child trafficking Satanists is Vinny's jokes.